In Showtime's Yellowjackets, we meet Shauna Shipman, a suburban mom hiding a deadly past. She survived a plane crash, endured the wild, and then she killed and ate the flesh of her teammates. But her story isn't entirely fiction. Today we're going to look at 3 stories of those that committed the taboo, all in the name of survival, power, and in one case, obsession. If this is the kind of thing that creams your cheese, feel free to like, share, and subscribe, and turn on all notifications. On with the show. Renee Hartvelt was a Dutch student studying literature in Paris back in 1981, and on June 11th she was invited by a fellow student who needed help in the same class. She wrongfully assumed he was harmless, so she accepted his invitation and visited him at his apartment. Once there, he slipped away to grab refreshments for the two of them, but when he returned, it was with a rifle that was aimed at the back of her head. Unfortunately, she had entered the apartment of Asahi Sagawa, a troubled man who had formed an unhealthy obsession with her, specifically eating her. Sagawa was a man who was himself unpopular and lacking in confidence. He considered himself weak, ugly, and small. As a child, he developed an unhealthy fascination with the consumption of human flesh. And while he was able to curb these urges while he was young, once he was an adult, he committed himself to eventually eating human flesh. He had tried once, but was caught before he could cause serious harm, and spent a few years afterwards in psych wards instead of prison, thanks to the wealth and influence of his family. After being released at the age of 28, he made his way to France, where he wanted to pursue a PhD in literature. But his dark desires still festered inside of him, and every night he found himself bringing home women of the night, but wasn't able to gather the courage to do the deed. But that all changed with Renee. Once she was dead and he had recovered from the initial shock, he began the arduous task of eating her, and over the next 2 days would prepare various parts of her body for consumption. He was caught almost immediately when he tried to dispose of what he hadn't eaten, as he had packed them into suitcases and started dragging them across the city in an attempt to dump them. He was arrested, but due to inconsistencies as to where he could be tried and detained, he was set free, and as soon as he left France for Japan, he was a free man. Over the years, he cultivated a bit of a macabre following and would make various public appearances, including on the covers of magazines, books, and television appearances, as a, get ready for this, a food critic. He also made comments on numerous occasions to want to try human flesh again before he died. He would pass away in February of 2022, and whether or not he made good on his dark promise is a mystery. On April 17, 1847, a group of rescuers were tasked with traveling into the Sierra Nevada mountains, where a group of travelers had been trapped in the mountains because of the harsh winter. This would be the 4th rescue attempt, as due to the size of the party, they had to take small groups at a time, and this would be the final rescue party. Once they arrived at the camp, they looked around in horror, as everyone was dead except for one man, Louis Kesselberg, and surrounding him were the partially eaten remains of his companions. Louis was a German immigrant who lost his wife and child early in the journey, and was known as a grumpy and unruly traveler amongst the group. After they had gotten trapped in the mountains, he had inadvertently injured himself while attempting to chop wood, leaving him lame and not of much use. The 3 previous rescue parties came and went, but he had stayed behind each time due to his injury, and by the 4th, any source of food was long gone, leaving only the dead and each other to feed on. After his rescue, it didn't take long for rumors to spread that he had killed those that were with him, that he had robbed them, and that he was cooking someone's liver when he was found. But he vehemently denied these accusations, confessing that, yes, he had eaten some of the flesh of his companions, but they had already passed, and he was simply trying to survive. Whether any of this was true or not, it didn't stop the rumors from spreading far and wide, especially when it was revealed that the last to perish was a young woman named Tamsin Donner, the final member of the Donner Party. And one of the more disturbing rumors was that Lewis had told his rescuers that she tasted the best. On April 16, 1874, a man named Alfred Packer stumbled out of the San Juan Mountains in Colorado and made his way to a nearby inn begging for food and lodgings. After he had been given food that he couldn't eat without vomiting, he was asked where he had come from and what his business was. He told them that he was hired as a guide by 5 men to lead them to Breckenridge in search of gold. However, he got separated from his party. Wandering the mountains during the winter months, there was no game, so he survived on roots, vegetation, and even the leather from his own shoes, until he stumbled across their town. While the men listened intently to his story, they couldn't help but notice that, for a starving man, he seemed relatively healthy, with no hint of emaciation. At the end of the story, they asked him where the rest of his party was, and he told them that they had died in the mountains. Later in the year, a search party was sent out to recover the bodies, but what they found was only horror. They found the bodies of the 5 men, nothing more than bones, and it was clear that no animal was capable of such clean brutality. In fact, a few of the men had their skulls caved in from what was likely the butt of a rifle. Alfred would be arrested, and upon his arrest he would confess that he had eaten some of the men, but they had already died of exposure and that he was simply trying to survive. Because of the crime scene, no one believed him, and he was tried and convicted for the murder of his comrades. For the rest of his life, he would be known as the Colorado Cannibal. Shauna Shipman may be fictional, but her darkness is grounded in truth. From Sagaway's obsession to the Donner Party's desperation to Packer's betrayal, Yellowjackets isn't just a show of cannibalism, but a reflection of ourselves, and asks the terrifying question, what would you do to survive? Could you do the things that Shauna did? Drop your thoughts below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more twisted truths behind your favorite shows. And if you want me to go more in-depth into each of these stories on their own video, also be sure to let me know in the comments. With all that out of the way, see you next time.